Welcome to Carrying the Fire, Indigenous Women Restoring the Land, a 3-part Get FireSmart Podcast series about Indigenous women and their efforts to restore good fire to both land and community. These are stories of fire as memory, as medicine, and as a way forward. They're first-hand experiences of loss, resilience, and renewal. In each episode, we hear from one woman, her journey, her teachings, and her vision. And through their voices, we begin to understand fire not as an enemy, but as an ancestor and ally. Today, we meet Ashley O'Neill, an experienced firefighter, burn boss, and proud member of Ktunaxa Nation near Cranbrook, BC. In this episode, she outlines how cultural burning knowledge was interrupted, both by law and policy, and how listening to elders across nations rebuilt a living practice. You'll hear her reflections on identity, trust between agencies and nations, and why cultural and prescribed fire both matter. She also looks ahead, training crews, building capacity, and envisioning a hands-on training hub where structural and wildland worlds learn together.
Ashley, can you share a bit about your background and how you became involved in cultural burning?
That's a good question. That is actually super recent to my career. I didn't actually get back into, let's back up a little bit. So I started prescribed fire. So I started being a burn boss in training it was pre-COVID times. And that's where I met Bob Gray and collided with the city of Cranbrook, Colleen Ross, and we did mountains of training to become burn bosses. And then that kind of opened up the door for me to cultural burning, because growing up in a colonial way, right, off reserve as a young child, but back and forth, I didn't learn a whole lot of fire culture in the beginnings of my life. I knew it was important. I knew that we used fire for certain things, ceremonies, also sweats, food, and tanning hides. Like I knew that was part of the culture, but I did not understand what cultural burning was until later on in my life. And then as the years have progressed, I've learned from my own people, from our elders, and also from other elders from different nations, a combination of different ways of how cultural burning was practiced. And so even though we are all different nations, our practices are very similar, I find. So listening to other people and talk about how they use their cultural fire, and the benefits are the same. The outcome is the same. So even though that my people are from the Kootenays, other people's from Shuswap, or other people from BC, and also other people from different countries, Australia, California, our practices are very similar. And so cultural burning was lost to us many, many years ago. 1874 is when the Burning Act came into play. And that was in the midst of residential schools and Indian agents, and putting the Indigenous people on reserved lands and taking away their culture and their rights and their beliefs. And so that's when cultural burning, I find, was taken away from us. And with that time being gone, and a lot of that history was forgotten and lost because we were not allowed to pass on that knowledge to our next generations. My grandmother is a residential school survivor, and same with her parents before her grandparents before her, and her parents. My mom was the first generation not to be forced to be in residential schools. However, at that time, a lot of the knowledge was already lost and forgotten. But digging and researching and speaking with multiple elders, not just from my reserve, but other reserves like Ktunaxa, Yaknukliet, and Yakanuki, I was able to learn parts of our practices as well.
Can you share a little bit about what fire means to you and your nation?
I am fire. I am Akinkuku. That's how I've always felt. I've always felt very connection to fire as a child. I was always memorized by fire itself. I remember looking at fire, and I've been a firefighter I'm coming on to my 18th season. And I remember when I first started structural firefighting, I would just be memorized by watching things burn. And I always felt weird to me putting out those fires, right? I always thought, well, I'm a firefighter, but I'm so memorized by staring at this fire and just loving it and wanting to be with it, right? Being a part of that fire. And so when I got older, the last few years, I was like, I feel like cultural and prescribed burning is what I'm actually supposed to be doing. I'm not actually supposed to be putting out these fires. I'm actually supposed to be embracing the fire and spreading the fire and adding good fire back to the land. And so when I started doing the Burn Boss training, I was like, this is it. I want to retire from actual firefighting and then spend retirement in burning. That's what I want to do from now on. And I feel like that's where I actually belong. As much as I love fighting fire, being in the chaos, working with the crews, working with other entities, working with other communities, I love all that. I love the chaos and all of the excitement that comes with it. But in the end, I feel at home when I'm burning the land. I feel calm. I feel connected to the land. I feel like I'm doing something very important, not just for myself, but for my people, for the land, and for our surrounding communities also.
It was really beautiful. Can you share how Indigenous peoples, especially Ktunaxa, have used fire as a tool for land stewardship?
So long before colonization, before David Thompson and all those people came over to the Kootenays, the Ktunaxa people have been on that land for over 14,000 years. And we used fire on a regular basis, not only for mitigation, because we didn't have mitigation problems back then. Where I come from, we're open grassland areas, and we live in the Rocky Mountain Trench, and it is fire valley. We're prone to fire. Our forests are a ponderosa pine fir mix, and our ponderosa pines are the huge ones, and they got the thick bark. They're supposed to last through that heavy sets of fires. And so our people, we were migratories. So we were teepee people, and we would travel, and we would do loops within our territory. And those loops started at Revelstoke, all the way down to the Arrow Lakes, right into Washington, Idaho, Montana, back up through Alberta, down through the Kootenays, west and east Kootenays. And that was our traveling pattern. And we were known for, once we were done on a parcel, wherever we were, depending, and it didn't really matter the time of year because we didn't have encroached forests. We didn't have heavy fuelage at that time. But we would burn the land as soon as we left. And maybe it took us 1 season or 2 seasons to get back to that same spot. And when we would arrive, the grass is green, we got new trees coming in, our berry bushes are plenished, our medicine plants are plenished. Also with the green grasses, what does it bring in? It brings in animals, and who eats the animals? We do, right? So we knew the beneficial of using fire to the land because it was a way of the natural ecosystem, and it was a way of our life also. And we also used fire for other things, not just for cooking, for traditional uses, for working with or for burning land, but we also used fire as a defense mechanism also. So if we were fighting amongst other tribes, we knew fire was a benefit, and we've used fire before for war purposes. So there is proof in our old growth trees down in Nucleate, which is Tobacco Plains area. They've seen every 3 years there's burn rings in our trees, and it's in the fall because after that time, after we would burn the land, we would plant our tobacco seeds, and that's what would help produce our tobacco.
That's really interesting. How do you feel about the way the past has shaped today's relationship with fire?
That's a hard question. I think mismanagement of the forest was a huge indicator here. I think that it has been not maintained and maintained for decades. And we're talking not just decades, centuries also. And now we're playing a catch-up game. So fire back then was less intensive to fires that is now because we do have a lot more fuels. We have a lot more housing, interfacing, things that are going on in our forest types. It's just not forest anymore. It's a multiple of other things. Hence the reason why we're getting these big mega fires now, droughts, you name it.
What does your current work or connection to fire look like?
It's busy. It's so busy. So the last couple of years, I started working for my own people, and that's where I started Ktunaxa Fire Service. And my goal is to train our people and get them out there, and not just for firefighting. So I've trained my crews to become Type 2 wildland firefighters, contractor crews for BCWS. I've also trained them in prescribed and cultural burning practices. And then they also do wildfire risk reduction. We also do fire smarting, and we have a firewood business. We also have heavy equipment also. So, my goal is to not only train our local people or my people, but to expand it, right, to build the capacity. I find my crews that are mixed crews are my better crews. Everybody brings something different to the table. And with that saying, hopefully in the next 3 to 5 years, I'm going to say this on a podcast, but I'm going to tell you this. Hopefully, I'm going to build the Fire School of Excellence in the Southeast Fire Center in the next 5 years. And that will be a massive training facility for everybody in the Southeast Fire Center, the rest of BC, the rest of Canada, and whoever wants to come in from the States. We're going to do mountains of wildfire training, mitigation training, forestry. We're bringing in helicopters, bombers, heavy equipment. This is going to be a whole boots on the ground operational training facility for people to come train at. So you can bring structural firefighters. We'll have our wildland firefighters. We can meet in the middle. We can do training for urban interface. It's going to be a massive training facility so we can go and learn together and do what we want to do together, which is mitigate fire or put fire on the land.
That's a lot of work to do in 5 years.
I know. I already started though.
That's good.
I already got the first little bit of monies to start, so we're trying.
What challenges do you and your nation face in using fire today?
These are starting to work more smoothly. So I have really high hopes for the future. And I think we are going to accomplish a lot of things if we continue to collaborate and work together.
It's wonderful to hear all the things you're doing and how people are helping you and how you're helping your community through that.
Well, thank you, Jason.
What roles have you seen Indigenous women play in revitalizing fire stewardship?
Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. Inspiring women is really big in my life. You got to remember, when I started firefighting, I was the only female in the fire hall. And being a female in a man's world, I call it was very difficult. Firefighting, I've done other things. I worked in an oil patch, I drove truck. I've pretty much lived in a man's world majority of my workforce. And inspiring women at that time for me were very little because there wasn't a whole lot of women in that industry. Not until I got older and been more involved with fire. There has been a few women. I have a handful of women right now in my life that are my mentors. Colleen Ross, right? Burn Boss. She's one of mine. Dr. Amy Cardinal Collinson. Christensen. She's got such a tongue. Just Dr. Amy. She is a huge woman that I love to listen to talk, and her spirit is so warm and welcoming. There is a few women in my nation that I look up to quite well. The Sukan Cheryl Kashmir is one of them. There's a couple of my aunts, Faye O'Neill, Beverly O'Neill. My grandmother was a huge influence and partially raised me throughout my life, and strong Indigenous woman, 83 years old and still has 2 jobs. So, that's where my workforce comes from. From that woman. I'll probably be 100 and still in fire. And a few other of my aunts from the other sides, the ones who've pushed me really hard. When you're crying, they give you that tough love. And they say, wipe that off your face and smack you around a bit, and then they send you on your way. And you're like, I needed that. Not coddling you or anything, that tough auntie feeling. But also other women in my life, like my friends, it's my girlfriends have been there to support me for years. And if it wasn't for those women in the background telling me I could do it, I probably thought I couldn't. So there has been a lot of women influences in my life throughout the years that have really pushed me to become who I am today. Women in the fire world, women not in the fire world, but women in general. And it takes a lot to see strong Indigenous women. We've been suppressed for so long that, actually winning this award, one of my aunts came up to me, gave me these earrings, actually, Caroline, Auntie Caroline, and she was so proud of me. She's like, another Ktunaxa woman being strong and proud. I was like, oh, she was so happy, crying, giving me earrings. I was like, oh, thank you. So, yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that was a great answer. It's like amazing as a younger Indigenous woman to see, like, there's definitely been women that have gone through like a hard process to get where they are, but it's like super inspiring for me to see like you and Dr. Christensen in these spaces, like winning awards and like talking to other people and like teaching.
Yeah, and it took a long time for us to be there, a long time. There has been many, many years of doubt in yourself, or especially being in this kind of industry. I don't know how many men have told me that I could not be a firefighter. And here I am today, right? Absolutely inspired me more because I don't like the word no, as you can tell. And I was like, screw you, I can do whatever I want. And I prevailed and I just pushed forward. And now I hope that all of those men see me today and say, oh, I told her that she couldn't be a firefighter. Well, here we are. I am, still am, and pounding the pavement harder and better than ever.
So I know that your community, Ackham, has been evacuated in recent years. Can you share how this impacts perceptions of the work you do?
It's a sensitive question. Yeah, so this 2023 was the St. Mary River fire. I was there the day it broke out. I was actually, the band manager called me and said, hey, I actually just finished a meeting with him about fire smarting the community, literally. And I wasn't even gone from his office for 5 minutes. He calls me and he's like, hey, can you come back? I said, yeah, why? What's going on? And he's like, can you go check out this fire? I was like, where is it? He's like, there's a fire on the reserve. One of the other ladies was there. He's like, go find her and see what's going on. That day we had a massive windstorm, a 60K wind plows. It was crazy. I got to where the first fire was and it was down power lines and it was starting to brew really quickly. In an area of drought. It was an actual wetland parcel, but it was so droughted that there was nothing wet there anymore. And it picked up quick. And there was a massive interfacing like hill going up. And the wind picked it up and took it for a run. That was the first fire. The second fire we couldn't get to because there was down power lines across the road and it was in the village. And the village is where most of everybody lives. One way in, one way out. I'm looking at this fire thinking, oh my God. So I knew some people already called the city of Cranbrook fire department. And so I was on the phone with BCWS telling them, this is what we need. You got to get down here quick. BC Hydro was already there trying to cut lines because we couldn't get into the village. And I'm like, there's people in that village. We don't know who's in there. So Scott arrived, Scott Driver, fire chief of Cranbrook. And I'm looking at this thinking, we can't get in there. I don't know what's going on. I said, this fire's picking up quick and the houses are all right here. I'm like, we're going to have to call an evacuation. I'm looking at Scott. He's nodding his head. I'm like, we don't know what's going on here. So yeah, we ended up calling an evacuation really quick after that. There was people still in the village. Luckily, there was people, actually people from my crew in there. And they were banging on doors and kicking in doors and trying to get everybody out. One of my crew members said he was banging on doors and houses were burning down beside him. But they knew that there was some people there. You got to remember, this was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon too. So a lot of people were at work, but the elders were home. And then there was a few people on night shifts. So we were trying to make sure that we got everybody out. That day we lost 7 homes. And then the rest of the 2 weeks, we lost 85% of our forest. That was a very hard fire for me to be at, because when we talk about reconciliation, this was at a point in time where there was none. I was frowned upon from BC Hydro or BCWS and my own band. I was not allowed to fight any fire there, which was really hard for me, especially being on my own land. So this is where we've gone from in 2 years, from no, I'm not working with you, and now that they're actually signing contracts with me. So that's in the last 2 years. Like, do you understand how much fighting, blood, sweat, and tears I had to do to make that happen? From no, I'm not working to you, and here's your contract that you made, that you signed. That was the words, we are not working with you. Today is different. I just signed our Type 2 contract with BCWS like 2 weeks ago. That's how much I built in the last 2 years. But yes, struggling, right? And like I said, now I'm in a happy place with BCWS and with my own people. And I feel like there is reconciliation, and I feel like we're trying to work together to build a better future for not just firefighters, but for everybody else, right? So yeah, 2 years it took me. You know, I had to go through a lot of those roadblocks and closed doors to be able to figure out where to kick them in, right? And finally, this is where we are. It took me 2 years, and hopefully the next, 20 years are going to be a lot smoother. But there is always going to be roadblocks. There's always going to be somebody slamming a door in your face. And I've always learned that you can find another way to enter. There's always another door that will open. You just got to find it.
What do you hope for the future of cultural burning and prescribed?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm waiting for this. So, listening to CAL FIRE here, and having the cultural, you were part of that, the cultural workshop that we had in the springtime? Yes. And that lady from their tribe from California, I did a lot of speaking with her. So because she's, I can't remember what nation she is, but her Indigenous community has a really good working relationship with CAL FIRE. Now, prescribed fire and cultural fire, two different things. Prescribed fire, you got a whole bunch of paperwork you got to do, right? And make sure everybody's happy. Cultural fire is more on of a, I think it's more of a family-based thing. This is what we do with our kids. This is what we do with our grandmas, our aunts, and our uncles. This is a family-orientated thing, right? This is a cultural thing. This is supposed to be where we're doing blessings and ceremonies and adding something back to the land. Cultural burning, you got to go through all the red tape. Prescribed burning, you got to go through all the red tape. And it's hard, especially when you have the same purpose and you're working with other entities. So our government agency would be BCWS, that they would give us enough leeway to be able to practice our cultural benefits within our communities and in our territory as well, so that we could go out and practice these burns with the cultural significance on our own. So we don't need to have the burn planning. We don't need to have water tankers. We don't need to have a whole bunch of pumps. This is more on the liaison, like just chill and be with the people type thing. And I think to build that relationship with BCWS, I think they would be more comfortable if we did more training with them, which is coming down the pipe. For them to build that trust. And this is what that woman told me. She's like, it's all about trust. She's like, they trust us enough that they don't need to come bother us, right? We just let them know when and where we're burning. Good enough. She's like, someone might come out just to check things out. Somebody might not come out, but there isn't that red tape. There isn't all that paperwork, that CAL FIRE trusts their tribe enough that just to do it. And that's where I want to be with BCWS, that we're able to conduct cultural burns. Like, when I talk about cultural burns, these aren't like 52 hectare burns either. These are little parcels here and there. Just like my Aunt Caroline was telling me back in the day. So when she was a little girl, she also went to residential school, that when she would come home, each family has parcels of lands on the reserve. Right? And each family has that plot. And she said for weeks straight, it was nothing but smoke. So what would happen is one family would burn their parcel and they would wait till it was fully out. Then the next family would burn their parcel, wait till that one's out. And then the next week. So she said there was like 6 weeks of smoke, but then she said that was it. And they never had wildfire problems. They didn't have any of that stuff going on. Well, because they're also farmers. So they did it a lot for the farming industry, right? For their cattle, because we were known for Texas Longhorn. So, and our horses. So, you know, I wish that we could go back to that type of state where the community is taking care of our own land and each family. It doesn't have to be like that anymore, but, you know, there is a group of us that go out and start burning regularly around homes in the grasslands, because half of the houses that we lost in the St. Mary River fire wasn't even in forest areas. It was grassland. So, you know, if we could go in and practice doing the spring burning around everybody's home, I think that's where we can first start with the cultural aspects, right? Of protecting people's homes and properties, and for spiritual benefits also. I do know, like, I work with some of the little kids out of the schools on our reserve, and they're still scared of fires. Like, you gotta remember, half those kids lost their homes, and they're terrified. Every time they see smoke, they're scared. And I don't want that to happen for our kids. They're super terrified. And I want them to not be scared of fire and, you know, come with us. Come see what the benefits of fire are. Like, I understand that you lost your home, but, you know, we have to, if we apply good fire back to the land, low intensity fire, that we won't have that fear in our youth anymore. Don't be scared. Embrace it.
Talking about youth, what role do you see youth or the next generation playing?
Well, I hope that they're going to fully take on the cultural burning back. You know, I'm the start of it. And I hopefully in 20 years, I'm well retired, that we have these little kids that I see that are 8 years old that are in that fire world who are doing the cultural prescribed fire, also firefighting. Hopefully we're not doing as much as firefighting as then, but, you know, that still might be a possibility. But I hope that we can kickstart and change everything back to where it should be, you know, not extreme fire seasons, months without smoke, you know, and then everybody, like, you know, I bet you could talk to one person, it didn't matter who they were in BC, and someone's been evacuated or lost something from a fire. And that's the world we live in now. And that used to never be like that. So when people are talking about, oh, I was evacuated, you hear it more common now than you did 10 years ago. It was very rare to be evacuated. And, you know, as a firefighter, I usually don't see that side of evacuations, but on the St. Mary River fire, I did get on the fire and I was doing security. And I actually got to work with evacuees. And that was the very first time I ever worked with evacuees. And it was so powerful that I was really overwhelmed with emotion, because it was the Wednesday night, we were evacuating again, because I was evacuated twice, and I was actually being evacuated with my trailer on the back of my work truck with my dog and trying to get everybody else out of the area. And so that night I was surprised of how many people from outside the community came in with trailers, trucks, water totes, you name it, food. People were showing up to go in there. I was like, I can't let you in, but they're like, we're here. I'm like, okay, you got 30 minutes. So I let all these people in, and they were picking up people's cattle, horses, dogs. They were dropping off water totes to give people who were staying extra water. I had one farmer in there, and I was like, are you staying? He's like, I'm staying. I'm like, here's my number. You need anything, call me. So we were doing checks on him because I knew he was out there. He saved everything. He saved his barn. He saved all his animals. He saved his house. Thank goodness. But it was not just by himself. There was people that went in there that he had no idea who, just strangers, people within the community going in there to help and support and drop off water, bring food, pick up any animals that anybody just wanted out of there. And that's what that whole night was entailed. That's all it was. I had this one lady, she had a truck. She had 4 dogs, 6 cats, cows and horses in the trailer behind her. This 70-year-old lady, she's like, I'm ready. I'm like, okay, we'll ship you out. But it was so emotional. Like, I was so proud and overwhelmed with happiness of how many people were actually there to help other people that they didn't even know, you know? And everybody worked really well together. We actually saved all the houses on that north end. So that was a success. Nobody lost their lives. Nobody lost their pets. Nobody lost their land. There was a little bit of scorched land, but we saved it. So yeah, and that's all about prescribed burning. There was 2 prescribed burns that we had done on that reserve. Okay, so 2 months before that wildfire broke out, we did the biggest prescribed burn in BC, which we collided with the city of Cranbrook, the Cranbrook Airport, and the Ktunaxa people. And we spent 3 days of burning, Cranbrook Airport and 2 days on the reserve. If we did not do those 3 days of burning, we would have lost the Cranbrook Airport and well over 300 homes. Now, everybody always forgets to talk about the prescribed burn that they did in 2018 on the north end of the reserve. When the fire got to there, it went whoosh, and it stuck to the ground, and it stopped at the road. That's what saved all those houses to the north. Nobody talks about that burn. But I was supposed to maintenance burn it last year, and the fire took half of it. So we were waiting a couple years, and we we're going to burn the rest of it. Yeah, it was called the Indian Springs burn, and that's what stopped the fire in the north, hitting those other communities, the white communities, I said, because it literally stopped at the reserve line. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because I was like, it's going to stop here. And we were kind of iffy. It did jump over on another side, but they were able to grab a hold of it actually at that rancher's house. It burnt a bit of his fields, and he was with BCWS there at that time. And when I went back in there, he's like, yeah, we got it here. I was like, thank God. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
It's great to hear, and like so amazing to see like how the community came together.
Yeah, it was really intense, and it was really beautiful at the same time.
What advice would you give to a young Indigenous woman interested in this work?
I'm glad you asked me this question. Don't stop. Do not stop. You keep pushing, and you push further. And once you thought you pushed hard enough, you keep pushing more. Do not stop. If you need help, if you need support, it is there for you. You know, if any young Indigenous female wants to come talk to me, I am always here to have a conversation. I'm here to support. I'm here to give advice, because it is my responsibility to make sure that we are raising strong Indigenous women. And if it wasn't for the strong Indigenous women in my life, I wouldn't be here today. So if I can be a positive influence and a strong Indigenous entrepreneur and firefighter for some other young lady, then that's why I'm here.
Ashley's story reminds us that fire is not only something we fight, but something we carry, something we learn from, protect, and pass on. Next, we head north with Darlene, who has spent decades mapping ancestral fire on the land to bring back food, medicines, and biodiversity. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon for part 2.